Hi, this is Max from Practical Accounting. In this video, I want to show you how you process a new employee in numbers, and we're going to focus on an employee with a fixed amount of hours. And in other videos, I'm going to show you how you process, for example, a new intern or an employee with a 0-hour contract. So now we have logged into numbers, and this is the screen you see. First of all, we need to check here whether numbers is acting in the correct period. You see it's now acting in the month of May, and this needs to correspond with the month that the new employee is starting in. So if it's, for example, April or June, just select that here and change it. And if you go back in time, for example, to April, then you need to change the month, but you also have to unlock it here to go to unprotected mode. If you don't do that, you'll get an error later on. So for this example, May is just fine. Then we have to go to employees here at the left. And then we click on the plus button right here. And then we're going to fill in all the information. You see 4 blocks at the top here. You can just leave it as it is. Payroll is highlighted. That's fine. Even if it's a new hire, don't change anything here. Just leave it on payroll. Default employee, you can leave blank. The in-service date is the first date of his employment. Be sure to fill that in correctly. Employee number is the number that numbers will use to refer to the employee. This, for example, the number that will show up in the list right here. So this is not important to change. Fiscal number is also known as the BSN number. We strongly urge you to fill that in, because if you don't, then the anonymous tax rate will be applied to him, and that's 52%. So be sure to always fill in the BSN number right here. I just filled in a fictitious one. Then we're going to fill in some basic information. Let's see. Let's say his name is Pim Davids. Date of birth needs to be correct. Then the country of birth needs to be correct. You can fill that in on the list here. Gender. The nationality needs to be correct too. Marital status is important. So let's say Pim is married. Documents we can leave right here. We just continue. Some contacts you can fill in if you'd like. You don't have to. If you're a company who would like to give their employees logins into numbers so they can see their payslips, for example, then it's useful to fill the email address in already here. So I've just filled in mine, and I'll show you later on how to make the login. Then you have to fill in the living address of the employee, fill in the zip code and house number, and then numbers does the rest. Bank account number is very important. That's the bank account to which the salary is paid. So make sure you select the right country, fill in the IBAN. So I've just filled a fictitious one. And if it's a foreign bank account, fill in the BIC code as well. Very important. Click on next. Contract start date. In this case, numbers will copy the first date you filled in here at the first step, but just check this to be sure. Trial period, we do recommend to fill in, because then numbers will send you an email when the trial period is almost over. So that's useful. Let's say it's a month. Type of contract is of course important. If you click on permanent, then you can't fill in an end date, which makes sense. So if you fill in temporary, fill in correctly. Let's say it's a contract for a year. And the end date you fill in here has to be the last date that the contract is, applied, right? So it's the last day of the contract. Make sure to fill that in. A written contract, this means that the employer and the employee have signed the contract. And if that's the case, then click on yes. We do advise to do that. Wage tax rebate, that's also called the loonheffingskorting in Dutch. That's very important. It's a discount on the wage taxes that every employee in the Netherlands has a right to. So it's very important to have contact with the employee whether they want to apply this, because it's their choice. And it's especially important when the employee has multiple jobs, because he is only allowed to apply this at one of his employers. So then he needs to make that decision. Very important. There's also an official document in which you can state his decision and sign it. That's called the opgavegegevens voor de loonheffingen, which you can find online, or you can ask us for a copy. So be sure to always discuss this with the employee. Very important. The nature of employment, you can just leave as it is. If it is an employee along the BBL line, that's called the beroepsbegeleidende leerweg in Dutch, then you can click this one. But otherwise, just this. Then the 4 things below here, you can fill that in if it's applied to your company in numbers. If you want us to fill in the settings so you can do this too, then you can let us know. Otherwise, you can just leave it blank. If we click on documents here, you can add some documents, for example, an ID or a contract or an income tax declaration, which is the translation for the document I just mentioned, the opgavegegevens voor de loonheffingen. Work permit. You can drop the file here or browse on it if you click on here. And then the document is also saved in numbers, so you can choose to do that. Click on next. Now we're at the final step. We have to fill in the schedule. Whatever you fill in here at the top, numbers will automatically calculate the hours per days. But we strongly urge you to make this weekly schedule as accurate as possible. So for example, if he works 32 hours because he doesn't work on Wednesdays, then fill it in like this. So then it's as accurate as possible, especially if your company also has a leave administration in numbers, then the leave requests from the employees are dependent on whether their schedule is correct. So this is very important to fill in correctly. For this example, we're just going to do 40 hours. Then the salary, there are a couple options here. If you click on minimum hourly rate, then the minimum wages are copied from the law, which is applied now. So that's 13.27 hours as of this moment. We can use a salary table, especially if you fall under a collective labor agreement. We do advise to work with the salary table. You can find that here in the list. Click on it and select the right scale and step. And if you want, you can also indicate the month and year in which the employee will go up a step automatically. You can do that if you want to. So that's useful to do, because if the salary table is updated in the collective labor agreement, then the scale in which the employee falls in numbers will also automatically be updated. So that then goes automatically. So that's a good advantage. Then another way is to use manual input, and you can just fill in your own salary. With an employee with a fixed amount of hours, we advise to use a gross full-time salary. So what would be his gross salary if he worked full-time? And please be aware that what is full-time in your sector? Is it 40 hours? Is it 38 hours? Could be 36 hours. So you have to be aware of that. So let's say 3,000 for now. Annual wage special rate we need to fill in. How do you calculate this? Take the monthly salary and multiply it by 12.96. So that way you calculate the yearly salary and also include the holiday pay. In this case, that's this. Then the wage components right here, those are components that show up on the payslip. And fixed means it's recurring monthly. So if we open this list, you see a couple examples. Reiskostenvergoeding is a travel compensation, an expense declaration, a bonus. Let's say the PIM should get a travel compensation of 40 euros every month. Always file this box pro rata. If you want to add another, click on the plus. And be aware it's fixed, so this is going to recur monthly. If that's not the case, then don't fill this in. Then we can click on submit. Then it's created successfully to employee. Then you also see him show up here on the left. And now I want to show you how you make the login I was talking about earlier. You see here in the card that he has no login. We click on the plus. Then Numbers copies the email address I filled in earlier. Select the right language. And then there are two user templates. If you use Payslip Viewer, then the employee can see their payslips and their annual statement, and that's all he can do. With Medewerker Login, he has a little bit more rights. He can, for example, uh, communicate a change of his address, or he can file an expense declaration, or you can file a leave request, or if your company uses the time registration module in Numbers, then he can register his time in Numbers, register his time. So in that case, always do Medewerker Login, click on Create Account, okay, and then an email is sent to that email address in which there's a link and he can activate the login, and then he has access to Numbers. So that's all I wanted to show. Be sure to check out my other videos, and if you have any questions, please let us know.